host. I hope that you're doing okay where you are. According to my computer, it says that I am live and I see my little sound meter kicking, so hopefully you can hear me. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Say hello to each other. I see some people are already out here. Let's see who's out there. Trudy, Wanda, Eve. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So if you are new to this channel, this is the Fruit of the Spirit Sew Along project. So what happens on this channel is I create a project and then I put that out there, and if people want to join me, I make the blocks and I do a demo every other week, and I just show you what everything is going on until we get to the end of the project. Okay, so what have I been doing? All right, Wanda, Robin, Deb, hi Michelle, look at all the people jumping on. Okay, so what I've started was this behind me. So in order to complete this quilt, you're going to need a total of 16 stars. And inside the stars is where you put your blocks or your applique pieces. And then we're going to finish up with the little 6-inch blocks, and I'm going to show you how to make those later on in the series. But let me just share my desktop so you can see what is happening. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open an image for you to look at. Let's see. Get on my computer. All right. And so let me just show you where we are so you can try to catch up with us. So I will share my desktop really quick. Can you guys see that? So far, we have worked on the red block in the back, which has the strawberries. So you're going to need the red blocks for position 1 and position 11. Those are love. Then you're going to have to, so far we've finished patience. No, we haven't. We finished joy. I'm sorry. And joy is the bright pink. And so that bright pink will go in position 4 and 13, just so you can see where we are. And then you will also, we've finished peace. And so the peace block goes in position 9 and 7. So you can see kind of where we're going with this. Now we're going to start working on the purple blocks. So I'm going to do the dark purple, which is 10 and 8 on my grid. This is going to be put together in sections. So when we sew this together, we're going to start from the middle and we're going to work our way out. So we're going to add the banners for peace, kindness, and love that you can see on there. And then we're also going to add blocks 6, 7, 10, and 11. So one of the things that I've done, and I'm going to show you behind me. Can you guys see that? Let me shrink all this stuff up. All right. So if you guys can see behind me, you can see what I've done so far. You can see that I have worked on all of the blocks that I'm going to need, right? So these are all of the blocks minus these two that are on my machine. So this is the purple that I'm going to use. And I went with a darker purple because I felt like I had too much of the same color. My pinks are kind of too similar. And so I went with a really deep purple for the block today. I still have to finish all of my banners, but I was going to wait because some of these banners are going to have a slice in there just to prevent any partial seams for this quilt. And so if you have time on your hands, go ahead and work on all of your stars, and you're going to need 2 of each color. So I have 2 green, 2 dark blue, 2 teal, 2 light purple, 2 dark purple, 2 fuchsia, 2 pink, etc. And so if you have time, go ahead and work on those. All right, so let me tell you what you need for today's block. If you haven't started, it's not too late to jump in. All right, so for today's block, I'm going to be doing fusible applique. Let me just show you what I have. I have 100% cotton thread. This is just regular. It says machine quilt. I like to use this when I applique. I'm using like a purpley fuchsia color because that kind of blends with most of the fabric that I'm using. So you don't have to have one fabric of every color. I have the pieces for my pomegranate that I'm going to put together today, and let me show you what that looks like. I have 2 batiks that are for leaves. I happen to have this in my sewing room, so I like how that looks, and so I fussy cut that. So dig through your scrap bins. You just never know what you have in there. And then you're going to need the tracing templates. Now the tracing templates are reverse image of how they're going to go. And then you need one completed block that looks like this. And so this is my star. I'm going to go ahead for the rest of the series. I'm going to have my stars completed, and then I'm going to applique them in there. I'm also going to be using some inktense pencils. I love these, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that. I'm going to use this color right here, which is called fuchsia. So I'm going to be using fuchsia as well, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get started so you can see what I've got going on here. So I've got my tracing templates, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and peel. I've already fused all of these, and I'm going to trim them up. My favorite pair of scissors to use, if you've never used them, is a micro serrated scissor. There's a lot of scissors out there, but if you like to applique, these have little tiny teeth on them, and they grip the fabric, which is one of my favorite things. And so these are all the pieces. So I'm going to start with the outside, and the outside of my image has the round pomegranate that has not been cut in. And so I'm just going to take, and I'm going to come in here and just literally cut this super quick and lay it down. Now, if you notice, I have drawn 2 lines on mine. And the reason why I have 2 lines is because this is where I want to end, and this is where I want to overlap. So there's going to be an overlap here. And for those of you who are not used to doing fusible, I do like to go ahead and fuse the entire thing down and then sew. Some people will sew bits and pieces. I don't like to do that because I don't find that it's helpful for my purposes. And so I'm just going to use a needle really quick. I'm going to peel it off, and this is going to be in the back. So I'm working from the back to the front, right? So this is going to be in the back. The next thing that I'm going to need is a couple of these leaves, right? And so I need at least 2 bigger leaves and 1 smaller leaf. I'm going to trim these. And don't worry if your leaves are not exactly like mine. You can literally just freestyle these leaves and cut them however you want. I just wanted to make sure that I got that image in there so that I have like nice stripes on my leaves, and I like how those look. Now they're a little bit bright, some of the stripes on mine, so I may color those in with my Inktense pencils just to kind of soften the batik. And that's one of the reasons why I like batiks, is because you get all this texture, and then they grab onto that ink really, really well. So let me grab this and just pull it off. I've been trying to use up all of my Fusible interfacing within a year, because what happens when you buy too much of this stuff, if you buy it by the bolt, you can end up getting glue that's not working. And I'll see how these turn out. I think I like this pretty well. This has a design that kind of sticks out, so what I may do is I may make that leaf a little bit bigger than what the pattern called for, just so that I don't lose that detail. I'm going to make it a tiny bit bigger. I'm going to come in here, and I always score these with a needle just because it makes it easier to get that off of there. There we go. Just splits the paper and it peels right off. So you're going to get all of that off of there, and you're going to do the big leaves from the back to the front. I like how those are looking. I might make an adjustment and clip that off, or I may lay it in a way that you don't see it as much. So I may lay it like this. All right, so let's put this on under here. This has an overlap, so that's going to go right there. That's where that leaf goes. That's how I drew it. And then this is going to have this leaf going this way. So it has 1 leaf going this way, 1 leaf going that way. And I'm going to let the fabric do the work for me. Now, I always feel my pattern, because I don't like for my applique to get too thick, because it makes it hard to sew. So if I have too much bulk there, I will probably clip that little section just like this, and then butt it together and then lay that back down. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want too much, way too much thickness when I'm trying to sew. And so one of the things that you can do is you can just use your wool mat, which is why this is great, and just pin these into place like this vertically, just to kind of hold them. That way you don't have to worry about them moving around. And so I always feel that, and that feels great now. And I'm going to make sure that that piece that I trimmed gets covered up. And so I have this. I want to make sure that I get it where I want it, not too close to that edge, and I'm going to get this next piece on there. So this next piece is a pale pink, and this is going to be layered. So this is the sliced pomegranate. And I chose pale pink just because the watercolor image that I have for this shows a slightly pinkish, tan, fleshy pomegranate. And so that's what I'm going to do. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to cut it exactly the way it's drawn. You can freestyle these if you want to. So a nice sharp pin makes quick work. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and lay it down. All right, so there I have the second part. Now this one has a tiny bit of overlap, not a lot, because you don't want that to halo through. And so if you're worried that it's going to halo through, you may want to do something different. And so for this, my little pomegranate has a fat booty. I drew it a little bit lopsided. And so I'm just going to trim it off. If you feel like your piece needs trimmed, you can just trim it like that. All right, and so now I'm going to slide this over, and I'm going to lay that down, and I'm going to have that facing upward like this. And now I like how rounded it is. Now, this little pomegranate has like a belly button, and so if you notice, my fabric had these little flowers on it, so I took full advantage of that. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to actually cut it from the top because I want that little flower to be the little bloom on my pomegranate. And so I try to let the fabric work for me. So whenever I shop for fabric, I look for a variety of colors, and I look for the texture or the print that's on there. And I always look for things that look like leaves or fish scales or anything that I might want to use in my applique, because I love to use batiks for my applique. And so even though that's not exactly the shape, I think it's going to look really cute that way. And so I'm letting my fabric do the talking for me in that case. Let's see, who is joining us? Oh, Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. Welcome back. All right, so there it is. This one's going to lay right there, and I'm going to let that little star do the work for me. And so now it's going to look like the top part of a pomegranate, and I like how that looks. And I never fuse my stuff until I get to the very end, and then I pull my pins and then I do it. And use, if you have ultra fine applique pins for this, this works great. So if you have any of those, use those instead of your big fat regular sewing pins. But either way, a little bit of steam makes all the little holes go away. All right, the next thing that I want to do is I want to stick this leaf under here. And then if I see it's much, much darker than what I need, I'm going to take and I'm just going to mark it. This is a water-soluble marking pencil. And so I'm just going to mark this right here. And I feel like there's not enough information out there on how to actually layer an applique. And so sometimes people miss this spot. And so now that I see that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in and I'm going to trim the excess off so that when I lay that piece on there, it's just barely going to overlap and you're not going to see the haloing part. Because what I don't want is a big streak of green where it should be peach. And I'm going to slide it down. And then I like where that's at, so I'm going to lay that down. And if that leaf is too big and I feel like it's taking over the design too much, I'm just going to chop it up. And that's what I may do right now. So right here, I'm going to cut this green edge because I feel like it's just too big. And that can happen. And so there, I like how that looks better. And I just want that to barely overlap, right? Just barely catch underneath there. What do you guys think? I think that looks better. All right. I hope you guys like this project. I was just sitting around talking to my husband, and I told him, I said, you know what? I have never made a quilt that was inspired by my faith, and I love reading about the fruits of the Spirit in the Bible, and so that was the kind of the brainstorm behind this particular project, was just sharing gifts with other people. And so that's how it was born. I'm glad you guys really like it. I wasn't sure if people were going to jump on board with me, but I'm glad that some of you guys have. I think this is going to be a really pretty project. Okay, so there we go. My crazy drawings and artwork. I just put them out there free of charge because quilting can be so expensive, and some patterns are hundreds of dollars, and I know that pattern makers have to earn a living, but I also want quilting to be accessible and affordable to everyone. All right, so there I have it. It looks like a pair of lungs almost. I was like, well, that's just how it's going to be. And now I need that bottom part. And for the outside of this pomegranate, because it's so light, I'm going to make sure that I do a buttonhole stitch that's nice and dark. And so that's one of the ways that I will let the thread do the talking for me. And so always think about that whenever you're doing an applique. What's going to stick out? What's going to be obnoxious? What do you need to remove off of there? And there we have it. And so my pomegranate is going to be like this. Let me flip that around. There we go. And just play with it a little bit, and don't be afraid to trim it and get it exactly the way you want. All right. So now that I have this, I'm not worried about the thickness of these little lungs on there, but if I really wanted to, I could remove some of that fabric back there, but I think it's going to be okay, and it's not going to show through because the light is behind the dark. Okay, so now I have a couple little leaves that I need to squeeze in there. I may move this over just like that. I have a couple of small leaves that I cut with a different fabric just because I wanted to give it variety. And so sometimes when you have too much of the same, it can just get really boring really quick. And so I just peel this on here. These little guys are always a pain in the neck to peel. But just peel that off of there and make sure that too much green doesn't show. I'm going to put this one on one side of over here under the red. I don't have to trim it too much. So under the red, I'm going to stick that little guy out there. Just like that. And then I may put a couple little leaves on the other side, and we'll call it a day. Save the little bits like this. What I do is I take my little scraps, and I have a little baggie of each color with my little bits that already have Fusible on there. And that way when I want to do a project, that was the case with this one, I already have little bits of Fusible. All right, second to last maybe. I might leave that little tiny one off. It might be too much. So you decide. You're the boss of your quilt, so if you decide you don't want something in there, then don't put it in there. All right, so that might be the last of my leaves right there, just like that. All right, so now that I have all of those, I'm going to take my pressing cloth and I'm going to lay a pressing cloth on there. And you don't have to use a pressing cloth. You can actually use any cloth. So you can use any damp cloth that you want. You can even use a piece of muslin. It doesn't really matter. But I have just a silicone pressing cloth, and I just like to carefully lay it on there. So once I have it exactly where I want it, You can use one of those little tiny pressing irons if you want. That works okay. But me, I just have these little Teflon pressing sheets. You can use paper. So a piece of paper works just fine. And then I just lay it flat down, just like that. And then I'm going to press the heck out of it. That is an actual quilting term. Press the heck out of it. I'm using a little bit of steam. And the reason I'm using steam is because I want that heat to go all the way through my pressing cloth. All right. Then I'm just going to peel this back carefully. And voila. And I'm liking how that's looking. All right. So now you see my pomegranate is not very easy to see on this background, which is fine because now I'm going to be taking this and I'm going to be stitching all the way around. And guess what happens if you don't like something like this right here? I'm not a fan of how this is close to the edge, so while it's still hot, I can peel it back and I can trim it. If you ever feel like you don't like something, don't be afraid to go in there and just heat it really quick with your iron. Take a needle and pull it up slightly and you can actually trim it. So now that I've got it peeled up, I'm going to take my finger and pull it and then just trim it down because that was a little bit too close to the edge. So I'm just going to trim it off there. How about that? So if you ever make a boo-boo, you can fix that boo-boo. And if you ever want to peel a piece off, you can always steam it and then pull it up with a needle, just like I did, just a regular sewing needle, and there you go. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to use my next thing that I showed you guys, and those are my inktense pencils. And so the pencil that I'm going to be using is this fuchsia color. And so this, I'm just literally going to use a little bit of water, nothing fancy at all. So I'm just going to take a little bit of water on a lid here. See my water? I just have plain water on a lid. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to color the top of that pomegranate because that pomegranate is darker at the top than it is on the cut sides. And so in the image that I created, you have this little pomegranate head is a little bit darker. And so what you're going to do is you're going to come in here and you're just going to add a little bit of color. And then I'm going to take a paintbrush, a little tiny paintbrush, and add a drop of water, kind of dab it, and then brush it towards the pomegranate so it doesn't go away from the pomegranate. Just keep it away from the edge. And then just bring it towards you. And now it's getting that dark color. And once this is heat set, it will stay. And I'm just dabbing it in my hand. You can use a little paper towel if you want. And I'm just bringing it inward and giving it that watercolor look that I'm looking for. And I blend it. And then when I'm done, I could dab it with a little piece of batting. It doesn't matter what you have laying around, a piece of paper towel, anything. But then I'm just going to let it dry, and then I can press it with my iron. And then once it's dry, it will actually stay that way. And so I'm going to maybe do this a couple of more times till I get the pomegranate color that I want. I can also go in here and go a little bit deeper. And if I wanted to, I could come along this edge just to make it stand out a little bit, which I might. And so I may just come around that edge just like that. And that's just to give it a little bit of a highlight because my fabric that I used was really light. If you use a slightly darker pink, you can do that, but I was just wanting to use the scraps in my sewing room. And so then I'm just going to take and dab the excess on my hand and then come over here. And when that dries, that fades a little bit. And I'm going to leave my pomegranate just that way. Like I said, dab it. Just put a little bit of water on that. Spread that ink around. That ink is permanent and it's washable. So once I wash that, it's going to be fine. I said, just put a little water on your hand. And now this will be ready for it to dry. And then I can come in and do my heavy blanket stitch around there, and it'll look exactly the way that I want. It's a very realistic looking pomegranate. And we're going to be doing more projects where we do this kind of process because it makes some really beautiful, realistic pieces. And if you've never seen this before, I did an entire video series where I worked on a pumpkin and I finished a realistic pumpkin. So if you want to try working with inktense pencils, there's a drawing that I put for you guys, and this is my finished piece. I just need to stitch a couple of these. This is in my PhD pile, my projects half done, but this is what my pumpkin looks like, and this is done literally with just these pencils right here, just the basic set of, what is this, 12? And just a little bit of ink, and I did it in layers. And then I came in and I stitched all of the details in there with just a straight stitch on my sewing machine with black. And so that's how I got that. And so friends, if you guys are interested in more artistic stuff, there's going to be more stuff coming your way. I'm going to do some really pretty Easter placemats for you guys. But that is it. That is how I'm doing my pomegranate. I want my pomegranate to have that kind of realistic look. I'm going to come in here and do a little bit more work, and then I'm going to do a heavy, either a satin stitch or a blanket stitch with this fuchsia right here, and I think that will make that look really pretty. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do outlining with a dark green thread, and I think that will look pretty good. I hope you guys like that. And so just let me know if you guys have other things that you want me to work on, some things that you want me to draw for you. I'd be happy to do that. But your next task is to work on all of your stars and then decide how you want to distribute these and where you want these. So look at that pomegranate. That's looking pretty good. And so I'm going to do that a second time on my second purple block right behind me. And then I will see what I'm going to do next. So the next block that we're doing is in 2 weeks, and that's the pineapple, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm also going to be using a little bit of Inktense on mine. I just think that it looks pretty, and I'm also going to be using Inktense. You see my cherries up there? My cherries aren't as dark as I wanted them, so I'm going to come in and put a little bit of ink on them, and these are permanent ink pencils. So if you want to see what they are, they're called Inktense, and they also come in blocks, but they're not super expensive. I just got the basic set of 12. If you want to see what it looks like, I can show you the blocks as well. So I have the pencils and I have the blocks, and so both of these are great. These are Inktense blocks for doing bigger areas, and those are like a crayon, and you can actually grind that and make a watercolor effect on your fabric, or you can just use the pencils like I've been using. But these are great little tools. If you've never done these, once you let them completely dry and set them, these are made with ink, so they will stay on your quilt pretty well. You just don't ever want to bleach your quilt, but this is one of my favorite methods to make my quilts look exactly the way I want. And so you should think about using this. So see, like this is the fuchsia block. So I might come in here and just do like a little circle on that one right there and just make it look even more hyper realistic like this. And so by coming in and doing that on my pomegranate, then it makes it look more like the realistic pomegranate. All right, everybody, say hello to each other. We will see each other in 2 weeks. Please share my channel with people. We are close to 30,000 subscribers. And so my goal is to try to get to 30,000 by the end of this year. So if you have friends that love free quilt patterns and love to do sew-along projects, we've got a couple of things coming up. We've got a few more projects to do with Inktense pencils. I love how this turned out. And I'm going to be sharing a couple of more Jelly Roll patterns this year. So I'm super excited. So if you have any ideas of things that you might want. So if you want me to do a quilt with all birds, I'm thinking of doing birds from around the world. So I'm thinking about doing a birds quilt. If you want to do a birds quilt, please put that in the comments and tell me, yes, you want to do a birds quilt. Or if you want to do woodland creatures, we could do woodland creatures, but you let me know. I will start drawing some ideas. We have a nutcracker, a limited series nutcracker that I'm doing in July because we're going to do Christmas in July. So we got a lot of stuff coming on the channel. So thank you for joining me. I hope that you're going to play with some fabric and design your own pomegranate and put that in your blocks. And then I will see you guys in 2 weeks so you guys can see what I'm working on. All right, everybody, I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Stay in touch, ask me any questions, and put your comments down below. And then if you want to join me in the Jelly Roll Club Facebook group, because you can ask all the questions and post your pictures in there too. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to work on your UFOs. This one is mine. This one's my UFO. I got to finish it. I've got to finish quilting it, and I've got to finish binding it. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your work week. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.